Sue Moroney.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Mr Chair, Labor is opposed to this bill, and for all the right reasons, because from the Labor Party's perspective, the vision we have for New Zealand is a high-wage, high-skill economy, not this race to the bottom that is promoted by this bill by that government. Mr Chair, the front page of the Waikato Times yesterday, I think, said it all. Big banner headline, "Jobless fight for work." That was the headline on the front page of the Waikato Times yesterday. And in there, it documented the very real world, not the pretend one that we hear from the other side, from the government, but what is actually going on out there. It actually documented that in Hamilton, the Earthquake Commission has actually advertised 120 jobs at the Hamilton office since it opened last year. 1,013 people have applied for those 120 jobs. At the burger chain Wendy's, which is moving into Hamilton shortly, they had 100 applications for just 6 management positions. And they're expecting to have 500 or more people apply for just 50 minimum wage crew jobs. The Mexico Group is moving into Hamilton. These are all not exciting jobs, by the way, Mr Chair. This is not the brighter future that government promised. These are all minimum wage jobs. 200 people had applied for 25 jobs at that restaurant in Hamilton. That restaurant is going to be opening next month. Now, that's the real position that is happening out there, that small numbers of minimum wage jobs are becoming available and large numbers of people are lining up for them. And it's in that environment that this national government decides that the best thing to do for the future for New Zealand is lower wages. And to lower wages for 15 to 19-year-olds because they do not believe in that group, Mr Chair. They actually have given up on 15 to 19-year-olds. They've given up on them in terms of being able to do a good job at a decent rate of pay. And what this bill says is that they do not believe those people, those 15 to 19-year-olds, are up to a decent wage. That they actually need to have a law put in place that actually lowers their wages so that they can get an opportunity. They do not believe in young people. But they've also given up on arguing, as they did just last week in this House. They've stopped arguing that this bill creates jobs. Because, of course, it's ridiculous for them to even have pretended, as the Minister Simon Bridges did last week, that this piece of legislation somehow creates jobs. In fact, it does the opposite. And I just want to go through that so that people understand why it does the opposite. Because when wages are lowered, then actually spending power in our community is diminished. And when spending power in our communities are diminished, then that actually means fewer jobs, not more, Mr Chair, fewer jobs. Because work is created, jobs are created by work, not by cutting wages. Jobs are created when there is work to be done. Because employers are not charitable organisations, as Mike Sabin would have had us believe. They're not going to just go out there and employ people when there is no work to do. Those employers who were sitting in his electorate office supposedly last week were not there saying, Mike, I've got no work that needs to be done, but I'd just really love to employ some young people to put some money in their pockets. That is not what they were there saying. They weren't there saying that at all. They were saying, I've got work to do and I want to employ the cheapest people possible. That's what they wanted from that member. The work is there. This legislation will not create one extra job. What it will do is lower wages. And I warned New Zealanders last week, and I warned them again, if they think that the lower wages agenda from that national government is just going to be targeted at young workers, they need to think again. Because this is the slippery slope, Mr Chair. This is where lower wages start, but it's not where they stop. Because in this environment that I just described before, That situation happening in Hamilton, where there are a small number of minimum wage jobs available, Mr Chair?
Sue Moroney.
A small number of minimum wage jobs available and large numbers of desperate unemployed people going for those jobs. That is a haven for employers if they wish to exploit people, because that gives the employer all the cards. They hold all the cards in that situation. And I just want to go through the reality for the benefit of members opposite, because they don't seem to get this, what actually happens in this scenario. Mike Sabin and Chris Okenvold both said, oh, look, it's all right because it will be voluntary. Voluntary for whom? That's right. Because I want to go back to the burger chain Wendy's. 100 applications for 6 jobs. What's going to happen in that situation? Let's just apply this bill to that situation. So the Wendy's chain manager decides that they want to employ a person who's, let's say for argument's sake, they're an 18-year-old, and they fit the criteria set down in this bill. Is that Wendy's burger chain manager really going to say to that young person, look, by law, I can pay you as low as $11 an hour. Would you like that, or would you really rather be paid at $13.75 an hour? Your choice. You choose, you tell me. Do members opposite really believe that that is the discussion that is going to happen when Wendy's fulfills those 6 jobs that those 100 people applied for? Well, they've all gone quiet opposite because they know the real answer. The real answer is that the Wendy's burger chain manager is going to say $11, take it or leave it. Take it or leave it. And that is what the national government believes is a voluntary situation. They believe that that is giving freedom of choice. Remember that from Bill Birch? That's giving freedom of choice to that 18-year-old, because they'll be able to say, nah, thanks very much, but I'll just leave your job. They would have stood in that queue of 100 people, and mysteriously the national government members opposite believe that they are voluntarily going to say no to that job because they won't accept $11 an hour. Well, that by anyone else's standards is compulsory. And it is not giving freedom of choice to those young people, and it's certainly not going to bring about the high-wage, high-skill economy that we actually need to get this economy going. That's what we need in this country, not these endlessly bad pieces of legislation that this government keeps bringing forward that actually gets us in a downward economic spiral. Because this is yet another piece of legislation, Mr Chair, that will actually take our economy down, and it will be felt in the regions. It will be felt in the provincial cities like Hamilton, where those jobs, that small number of jobs, are driving those very long queues. And in those very long queues, there will be people from a range of age groups. A range of age groups. What this bill is trying to say to employers is, and it will be, Andrew Little's right, it will be the bad employers who take advantage of this. The good employers don't need this legislation. They don't want this legislation because they will be prepared to pay a decent wage for a decent day's work, Mr Chair. What this bill is encouraging employers to do is to go below a decent wage, because in New Zealand we've already determined that. The government actually has determined what they think a minimum wage is. They think it's $13.75. Gosh, I wish it was $17, but they think it's $13.75. They think that's a minimum wage. But when it comes to young people, they don't even think they're worth that, Mr Chair. They think that they shouldn't be getting a decent wage for a decent day's work. And that is fundamental to what I understand to be the sort of fairness that most Kiwis believe is right in this country. Fair day's pay for a fair day's work. This bill is undermining that very sacred Kiwi value. And it's coming from the national government because it's always come from the national government. It has always been their solution. It doesn't matter what part of the economic cycle we are in, recession or not, whenever there has been a national government in place, it's always been their answer.
Tracy Martin.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I rise to take a call on